Hey guys, Telegram Sam here. If you don't already know, I have an Instagram. It's telegram_Sam_vinyl. So if you're on Instagram, check me on there. But today's video is just a recent vinyl pickups where I show you guys records I've gotten in the last 2 weeks. I got quite a lot, but most of it was stuff people sent me, which was so kind of nice. But I'm actually going to start off showing the things I bought myself. So we got a couple 7 inches. First off is Stay As She Goes, Back to the Store Bought Bones by the Rock On Tours. When I got this, it was actually still sealed. It's a 2006 US press. Great rock, garage, indie music. This is version A. I believe they did 3 different versions of, I think it's just Stay As She Goes, and then Store Bought Bones was the same, but this version is like the radio version that was played a lot. But yeah, Rock on Tours, great sort of super group. This was like, I think one of the first little projects Jack White did. I think after, kind of like right before the White Stripes broke up. But yeah, really love the Rock on Tours, and the song is awesome. Both songs are awesome, actually. This was a pretty cool find. So this is actually, I didn't really think much of it when I first saw it. I almost didn't even pick it up when I saw it because I didn't really recognize this label. This is Gorda. This was like a smaller label that they actually only did 4 pressings of 45s. I believe this was early 60s little label. So side B has Confidential by Sunday Night, soul music, doo-wop music, but the other side has Memories of El Monte. I don't know if you can see that, but written by Frank Zappa for the Penguins, featuring Cleve Duncan. Yeah, that was a cool find. I actually ended up doing a little bit of research, and yeah, this was sort of during Frank Zappa's early 60s Studio Z days, where he would write and compose a lot of music, and this was just something that he sort of pitched to Cleve Duncan, and he decided to record it. And yeah, that was a pretty cool find. And it's a really great song, and I love the Penguins too, so they're a great doo-wop group, so that was a cool, exciting find. And then next up, favorite band of mine, this is Eagles of Death Metal with I Want You So Hard, Boys Bad News. This is original 2005 US press. Eagles of Death Metal are a great sort of rock, glam rock, pop band, I would say. This is the single from their second album, Death by Sexy, and if you aren't familiar with Eagles of Death Metal, it was sort of a side project of Joshua Homme from Queens of the Stone Age and his friend Jesse Hughes. But I really dig it. I really love anything Eagles of Death Metal related. I have several of their albums, and didn't have any of their 45, so this was cool. Alright, for the long plays, we got Thunderbird by Lil Walter. This is a 1971 UK comp of some of his work, and I love this cover. But Lil Walter is just considered one of the greatest harmonica players, especially in blues. He was sort of seen as the Jimi Hendrix of harmonica playing in the blues world, because he completely changed the way people thought of harmonica in blues music. And he played on a lot of early Muddy Waters albums and a lot of Howlin' Wolf albums when they were part of Chess. And yeah, he was just such a talented musician. He was also a great singer. He sang on a lot of the later solo stuff he would do. But this is a killer comp, super cheap. If you ever see it, get it if you like Lil Walter. And then this one just came on Syndicate Chapter, which is the comp label. Next up, this was probably on everyone's best of 2021 list, but I finally got Promises by Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and the London Symphony Orchestra. This came out, like I said, last year. Great electronic, soul, jazz, modal, I would say, and this was Sanders' first studio album in a decade. And God, this is just the definition of a beautiful album. It's both sides are all just one piece promises, and it's like a dream almost. It's it takes you on this like sort of floaty. I just like don't know how to describe it. It's kind of just like one of those albums that you really just have to hear for yourself. I've heard a lot of people try to describe it in different ways, and I can see that, but I also see more than that. Like, it's just one of those albums that you really have to experience, and I definitely recommend this. Even if you're not even that big of a jazz fan, this is just such a great mix of so many different genres and so many great instruments. It's a beautiful album. Just trust me on that. And this one just came on custom label. And I showed this in my last video. I was so stoked to find this. This is an early contender for the best finds of 2022 video. But this is the Seeds self-titled debut album. This is an original 1966 US mono press. Great garage rock, a little psych. And yeah, they were a major influence on the punk rock movement that ended up sort of springing up in the decade after this. But God, just great. Like the single "Pushing Too Hard" is probably their most well-known song. But this entire album is killer. I just love anything by the Seeds, and I've never seen any of their original stuff in person. And I only paid $20 for this. And right now, the cheapest one you can buy on Discogs is $120. But this is killer. Really happy to find this. And this one just came on the GNP Crescendo label. Next up is this probably the weirdest comp album I have ever heard in my life. This is Music to Make Your Ears Hurt. This is original 1990 US comp for some artists that were on the Black and Blue Records label. But the main reason I got it was because of this name right here, G.G. Allin. If you aren't familiar with G.G. Allin, he's a very divisive figure in punk rock. He's mainly known for his stage act. He would cut himself. He would take laxatives before a concert, go out naked, and then like shit in his hand, and then like throw it at the crowd. He would start fights with people in the crowd. So he's mainly known for just being a crazy, wacky performer. I've never really actually listened to his music, so I was like, oh, okay. And plus, it'll be cool to hear, some other things from. There's a great band called Algae Afterbirth and Playpen, Hollywood, the Cedar Street Sluts. Like, it's so weird because there's like these punk songs, there's these hard rock songs, metal songs, but then there's also like Prince and the Revolution style, like pop, synth, new wave songs. It's so weird. It's the weirdest comp. Like all this music that you wouldn't imagine being together, being sort of lumped together. I don't know. It was just super cheap. It was actually still sealed when I got it, and yeah, it's an interesting listen for sure. And yeah, this just came on a Black and Blue Records label. And this one was something I just sort of blind bought because it just looked really interesting, and I've never heard of this group before or this album. This is Freedom Serenade by Malone and Barnes and Spontaneous Simplicity. This originally came out in 1976, and this is a 2006 US press. It's such a beautiful mixture of like jazz, funk, soul, some like African world music. This was the only album from this group, and they actually got the last part of their name, Spontaneous Simplicity, from a Sun Ra song, which you can definitely hear the influence of Sun Ra on this album. This is a really, really great album, and yeah, I'm really glad I kind of just blind bought this. I probably would have never recognized anything from this group if I hadn't done that, and yeah, super killer, awesome. And yeah, this one just came on a brown, simple custom label. Alright, so that was all the stuff I bought myself. All these albums was VCLT from 3 different people. First up, we'll start off with Vic. Vic has sent me a couple packages in the past. He sent me this awesome reissue of Wild in the Streets by the Circle Jerks. This originally came out in 1982, and this is a 2022 U.S. press. This was their second studio album, and they do a really fun cover of Put a Little Love in Your Heart. I love that cover version of that song. But this comes with a great little booklet talking about, the history of the Circle Jerks. This album has all these great, pictures. It's so funny because actually, like a month or two ago, I finally watched The Decline of Western Civilization, which is considered probably one of the most important documentaries when it comes to punk music, especially like the whole LA scene, which is where the Circle Jerks came from in the late 70s, early 80s. And the Circle Jerks were a part of that. And it was so weird because I only know Keith Morris as, the guy from Off, and he has these like very long dreadlocks and sort of wears Harry Potter glasses. So it's so weird to see him like so clean shaven and with short hair. He's like almost recognizable to how he looks now. But yeah, that is such a great documentary. If for some reason you haven't seen that yet, watch it. It features the Germs, X, early Black Flag. Such a great documentary. But yeah, this is a cool little booklet. And I don't have any Circle Jerks in the collection yet, so this is a great one to start off with. And this one just came on custom label. Next up, a band I actually recently just started getting into. This is Bangkok Shock, Saigon Shakes, and Hanoi Rocks by the Hanoi Rocks. This originally came out in 1981. This is 2020 U.S. press. Great sort of rock and roll with a little bit of glam. This was their debut album, and it's funny because Andy McCoy and Michael Monroe, who wrote most of Hanoi Rock songs, kind of coined themselves as the Muddy Twins, as like a sort of funny take on the Glimmer Twins songwriting duo that Keith Richards and Mick Jagger call themselves. But I love this album. This is a great, just straight up fun rock and roll glam album, and they were very influential on the later Sunset Strip glam metal thing in the 80s. And man, I just really love them and really dig their sound. Just great. And this one just came on another custom label. And next up we got Mama Africa by Peter Tosh. This is the original 1983 US press. Great reggae, roots reggae, and this was his highest charting album that he ever had in America. I mean, Peter Tosh is just one of those just sort of big figures in reggae music, especially in the American market. He was kind of one of the more, like kind of like Bob Marley and the Wailers. He just did well over here. He was very palatable to the American audience. But I really want to dive into more like actual like Jamaican Kingston style reggae and the lesser known artists. That's definitely something I really want to try and do this year, and this is just a great starting point to kind of get myself familiar with the whole reggae sound. So, and this one just came on an EMI America label. Next up, a band I have never heard of before. This is Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow by The Muffs. Great garage rock alternative. This is original 1999 US press, and this was their fourth album. It's so weird because the singer, what's her name? Kim Shattuck, sounds a lot like Brody Dale from the Distillers, and but like the music reminds me so much of like early Weezer, like Blue Album era Weezer. So it's like this very interesting mix of like these very heavy, rough vocals, but this almost kind of poppy rock indie like backing sound. But I really dig it and really loved this album. So check them out if you're not really familiar with them or their stuff. And this one just came on a custom label as well. Next up, it's a very interesting album. This is Fans by Malcolm McLaren. This is the original 1984 US press. Great, I wouldn't say great, but interesting mix of electronic, synth pop, and opera. This was his second album. And this was sort of his version of mixing old school, like classical opera with, the new school. He was really getting into the electronic hip hop movement during this time. So he tried to put those two things together. I don't know if it necessarily works. I mean, it's very interesting to listen to, and the opera singing is really great. But like, some songs do well for me than others. I don't know. It's just an interesting listen, and it contains workings of famous operas like Madame Butterfly and Carmen. So yeah, I don't know about this one. It's an interesting listen. I might have to take a second to sort of like let it sink in, and then maybe in a month or two try and listen to it again, wrap my head around it. And this one just came on the Blue Island label. Alright, so that was all I got from Vic. Thank you so much, Vic, for those awesome records. And then these next two I got from Christian. He has a great YouTube channel, CG Vinyl Guy, I think. I'll link it down below. Great channel. He's sort of newer to doing YouTube videos. But he said he had a couple of extras of these albums, and if I wanted them, I was like, sure. This first one is White City, a novel by Pete Townsend. I've never really listened to any of Pete Townsend's solo stuff, so I was kind of interested by this one. This is original 1985 U.S. press. I would describe it as like pop rock, sort of experimental at times. This was his fourth solo album, and there's actually a 1 hour film that kind of goes with this album. It's sort of like a concept album where he kind of like delves into his childhood living or growing up in one of the poor sort of blocks of England, and I think White City was the name of the block that he lived near, and sort of the disparity and the class fighting and just all that stuff. And David Gilmour actually plays guitar on the song White City Fighting. I don't know if this is my favorite thing I've ever heard Pete Townsend do, especially when you compare it to like the Who stuff. Definitely doesn't compare, but the best way I can describe it is it definitely reminds me of like Phil Collins, 80s solo pop rock, but definitely has a little bit of like Pink Floyd, Division Bell experimentation in it. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about this record yet, but you don't know if you like something until you listen to it. So, and this one just came on this 80s Atco label. I don't think I've ever seen this Atco label before. It's so dated. And then you can never have too much of the Who. This is a Meaty, Big, and Bouncy by the Who. This originally came out in 1971, and this is a 1980 U.S. press. The Who are just a great hard rock. Some of the songs I would say delve into a little bit of psych. But this is a comp of singles released from 1964 to 1970. You have the usual suspects, so I Can't Explain, Happy Jack, My Generation, Pinball Wizard, but then you also have some other sort of like deep-cut ones like Pictures of Lily, The Seeker, A Legal Matter, Boris the Spider. So yeah, and plus I don't think I've ever really seen this Who album before, so never have too much Who. And this one just came on this MCA Choral label. I don't think I've ever seen that before or heard of MCA Choral. But yeah. Alright, and that was all I got from Christian. Thanks again for those. And next up is a lot of records that Christopher, a viewer of mine, sent me. And yeah, he definitely checked off a lot of albums on my jazz want list and a few extra goodies. So let's get into it. First off is this Scheherazade by Rainier in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is original 1960 U.S. press. This was a classical piece written by Rimsky-Korsakov, a very Russian name. And yeah, I mean, I have a few classical style albums in my collection, but I really don't have that many. And it's something I always want to dive more into, and I've been watching a lot of the Amoeba What's in My Bag videos on YouTube lately, and there's a lot of artists that really did classical, and I'm like, man, I should give classical a try. So this is a great little starting point. And this one just came on the RCA Victor red label with the shaded dog. Next up, we got a great jazz album that I always hear about. This is Le Grand Jazz by Michel Legrand featuring Miles Davis. This is an original 1958 U.S. mono press. Great jazz hard bop, features 31 of America's greatest jazz musicians. I mean, you have obviously Miles Davis, but you have Herbie Mann, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, Jimmy Cleveland, Hank Jones. I mean, just like a who's who of jazz during the time. And just, I've always heard about this album and how it's kind of like a must-have if you're getting into jazz. It's like a great introduction to a lot of those great jazz musicians' works, so I'm really excited to listen to this. And this is, I think, my first OG Columbia 6i. I don't think I have any other Columbia 6i's in my collection, so this is really cool. Next up, an artist you can never have too much of. This is a Talking Book by Stevie Wonder. This is original 1972 U.S. press. Great funk, soul, pop. 15th studio album from him. And the cover, the OG covers, actually feature Braille on them. So this is Talking Book, and then on the corner here is Stevie Wonder. And on the inside, it also has a bit of a Braille passage that I guess reads, "Here's my music, it is all I have to tell you how I feel. Know your love keeps my love strong." And I just love that. It's so cool. I think this was like the first like mainstream album to ever feature Braille on the cover, and I think that's such a great, cool idea. I mean, but this is one of Stevie Wonder's greatest albums. This is where he started to try to distance himself from, you know, his early beginnings in the 60s as being this like prodigy soul singer musician. He's kind of getting more experimental with Moogs and synthesizers, and just really trying to see what he could do in the scope of music. And you have one of his greatest songs, Superstition, on here. You Are the Sunshine of My Life, Tuesday Heartbreak. I mean, just You Got Bad Girl, Blame It on the Sun. That's such a great song. But yeah, I only have one other Stevie Wonder album, and I've been wanting some of his stuff from the 70s, so this was great. So stoked to have that. And this came on the Tamla label. Next up, we got a couple Miles Davis albums. This is Someday My Prince Will Come by the Miles Davis Sextet. This originally came out in 1961, and this is a 2013 U.S. mono press. Great jazz hard bop modal, his 7th album for Columbia. And you got John Coltrane on here, Hank Mobley, Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb. I mean, God, what a killer lineup. Yeah, so stoked to listen to this. I haven't got a chance to listen to this yet. Most of these albums I haven't listened to yet because this came a couple days ago, so and then this just came on a reproduction of the Columbia 6i label. And then we got Miles Smiles by the Miles Davis Quintet. This originally came out in 1967. This is a 2008 German press. Again, another great jazz hard bop, sort of post bop album from him. And you got Miles, obviously, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams on here. I mean, just a who's who of just great jazz musicians. And this one just came on a reproduction of the Columbia 2i with the 360 stereo sound label. And this next one had me cracking out because in the middle of all this jazz was this Ghetto Boys Mind Playing Tricks 12-inch single. I love the Ghetto Boys. I talked about the album that the song is on, We Can't Be Stopped, as one of like the top 5 albums. Like, if just any album could magically show up in my collection, no matter the price or rarity, what would it be? And it was one of the Ghetto Boys albums, and I just love the song. Probably one of their most well known songs. But yeah, this has a clean version, explicit version, and instrumental version of the song. And I guess this was a record store day thing that came on green vinyl. I think it was limited to 2,000 pressings, and it was to promote mental health and suicide prevention through the Jed Foundation. I think all proceeds went to the Jed Foundation, so that was super cool, and I'm really excited to have this. I finally have something by the Ghetto Boys in my collection. Next up, we got Point of No Return by Frank Sinatra. I don't really have that much Frank Sinatra in my collection. I have a few like Grace Hits CDs and one of the albums he did in the 60s. I think it was for a soundtrack for a movie. I can't remember the name of it. But this is a 1962 U.S. monopress. Great, the usual Frank Sinatra thing, pop, swing, a little bit of jazz. His last album on Capitol before he went to his own label, Reprise, however the hell you say it. I think it's Reprise. To me, that makes more sense. But yeah, you can never beat Frank Sinatra. He just has one of the greatest voices ever. So decided to listen to that. And yeah, just came on the Rainbow Capitol label. I did have a chance to listen to this because I have been really going down an old school gospel lane lately, and this is The Power and the Glory by Mahalia Jackson, with orchestra and choir conduction by Percy Faith. This is an original 1960 U.S. monopress and great gospel soul, like I said. But Mahalia Jackson is just considered one of the greatest gospel singers and just singers in general of the 20th century. She was a really big influence on Aretha Franklin, and her voice is not as soulful as I thought it would be. To me, it's more operatic, but that definitely doesn't take away from the songs or anything, and I think it adds more to the great orchestra conduction by Percy Faith. And yeah, it's just a cool one to have if you're interested in gospel and listening to Mahalia Jackson's Earth Angel voice. So and yeah, this one just came on Columbia 2i. And next up, we got a few Chet Baker albums who I don't have in my collection yet, but this is his album Place the Best of Lerner and Lowe. This originally came out in 1959. This is a 2020 U.S. press. But Chet Baker was the king of cool jazz. I would say there's a little bit of bop on this album. But who do you have playing on here? You have Herbie Mann, Zoot Sims, Pepper Adams, Bill Evans, Bob Corwin, Earl May, Clifford Jarvis. Yeah. Excited to listen to Chet Baker. This one just came on a reproduction of the Riverside label. I don't think I have anything else that Riverside did, so this is a cool one to have. I did listen to this one last night, and I really, really loved it. This is in New York, Chet Baker. Originally came out in 1958, 2020 U.S. press, cool jazz. And then you got Johnny Griffin on here, Al Haig, Paul Chambers, Philly Joe Jones. He's one of my all-time favorite jazz drummers. He just fucking kills it. But yeah, just such a simple, great. I feel like Chet Baker is great for people that are scared of jazz, are scared to get into it. But I feel like Chet Baker is such a great person to start with because he's just so smooth. He never really went out there. He never really got into the avant-garde, crazy experimentalism in the late 60s, early 70s like a lot of other jazz artists did. He kind of knew his lane and kind of stuck in it. But yeah, I feel like he's a great introductory artist if you want to get into jazz. And this is a fantastic album to start with. And this one just came on another Riverside reproduction label. And then the last of the Chet stuff, this is his Chet album. 1959 originally came out. This is a 2021 US press. Hard bop, cool jazz. And you have Herbie Mann on here again, Pepper Adams, Bill Evans, Kenny Burrell on guitar, Paul Chambers, Connie Kay, Philly Joe Jones. Man, just probably one of the greatest lineups on this album. And haven't got a chance to listen to this one yet, but stoked to hear it. And again, this one just came on another Riverside production label. Alright, and then we got this awesome Otis Redding album. This is the Otis Redding Dictionary of Soul, Complete and Unbelievable. This originally came out in 1966, and this is the 2016 US press. This was his 5th studio album, and the cool thing about this reissue is that it came with a mono and a stereo version of the album. This one is the stereo version, but just came on a reproduction Yellow Volt Records label. The only other Otis Redding I have is his Soul album, so I'm excited to add more of his records into the collection. Next up, a band I always hear of and have always wanted to get into, but never really have. This is the Soft Bulletin Companion by the Flaming Lips. This originally came out in 1999 only as like promo CDs around the time the Soft Bulletin album came out. But they did this for our RSD in 2021, the first time on vinyl. But experimental rock alternative. This just has outtakes, early versions of songs, and some remixes of songs that were from the album. Yeah, I'm excited to listen to this. I've never really dived into the Flaming Lips. I've heard a few songs from them, but I definitely want to listen to the Soft Bulletin first, probably before I listen to this. But I fucking hate when they do this weird, like, fake distressing on albums. Like, it has, like, this fake ring wear and, like, this weird coffee stain, and, like, I hate when albums do that. It drives me nuts. Like, why? Like, at first I thought, like, oh, maybe this was one of his sort of beater albums that gave me fine. If someone's giving it to me like that, I can't complain. But, like, when companies just purposely do this, like, I just don't get it. And this was a 2 LP set that came on this sort of gray silver vinyl. Well, last but not least, we're gonna end on Colossus of a record. And this is Saxophone Colossus by Sonny Rollins. Man, I thought I would never own a copy of one of these. This is not original. This would be worth thousands of dollars. But this originally came out in 1957, and this is a 1975 Japanese press, mono press. Great jazz bop, hard bop, Sonny Rollins' 6th studio album, and this sort of breakthrough album, and probably the one he's most known for. Like I said, original versions, American versions of this album go for upwards of 1,000, close to 2,000 for a really nice copy. But even like the later 60s reissues still go between $500 and $800. So these 4 and 70s represses are kind of a great sort of cheaper alternative to having something close to an original for an affordable price. But I'm so excited to listen to this. I do have Nucleus by Sonny Rollins, which is a great album he did in the 70s, and that was actually one of the first jazz albums I really bought. So I'm excited to listen to one of his magnum opuses. And yeah, this one just came on the Yellow Prestige label. Alright, and that was all I got these last 2 weeks. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.